Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Forecast. I'm Scott Pecoriello, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, John Sutton from Sunset Transportation. John, how's it going?
Doing very well, Scott. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Doing well, doing well. Sunset was one of the early adopters of WeatherOptics and our shipment risk solutions. And so today we're going to be diving into learn a little bit more about Sunset and also how WeatherOptics and Sunset are working together for a safer and more efficient supply chain. So, John, to kick things off, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and kind of your role at Sunset?
Yeah, I'm John Sutton. I'm the Director of Corporate Strategy for Sunset Transportation. We're a 3PL based here in St. Louis, Missouri, with 6 offices in the United States and Mexico. One of the common questions that I get whenever I give that byline is, what does a Director of Corporate Strategy even do, especially at a third-party logistics company? And I work in symphony with our operations teams, sales teams, and IT teams to make sure that we are aware of all of the solutions that may exist in the marketplace to be able to support what we do every single day, to be able to facilitate top line growth and eliminate gaps that we may have in being able to support the business. So as part of that, I'm afforded the very cool opportunity to make myself familiar with very cool services like what you all do at the WeatherOptics team. And when I remember the first time that I had seen some of your activity on LinkedIn and what you guys had going on, it was, I got to talk to this guy.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And just for like some background, how'd you get into this industry? Like, how'd you get into the space? How'd you get into Sunset? What's your background?
Oh my God, how much time do we have? Okay, I'm gonna give it the quick and dirty answer. So I attended Missouri State University in Springfield, Missouri, and they're an application school. So their job is to prepare you for the workforce as much as possible. And as part of that, your senior year, you actually have to take a class that focuses on interviewing places. And you have to demonstrate to the university that you are attempting to enter the workforce in some capacity. And they encourage you to get into small, growing businesses. So they asked me, where do you want to work after school? I said St. Louis, Missouri. And they provided me a copy of the local business journal. And I am third generation diesel in my blood. And what that means is my grandpa drove truck, my dad drove truck, and I knew that I wanted to get involved in the American supply chain in some capacity, particularly in the transportation side. So in that business journal, I had found that Mark Camarada, Sunset CFO, had just won an award for Small Business CFO of the Year. And that's a great signal that that company is doing well. So I go ahead and apply to Sunset. They were only about 80 people at the time. Today we're over 300. I go ahead and apply. And I get an interview, I get a job starting off in track and trace, and I'm so excited. I call my dad, and I'm just like, hey, I got a job. I'm working at Sunset Transportation, and he immediately hangs up. So I call him back. I'm like, hey, I think we got disconnected. You know, I got a job. And he's like, oh, no, I heard you, Sunset Transportation. Hangs up on me again. So I call him back. I was like, what's going on? He's like, dude, they're a broker. I'm just like, so? And he's like, did I not teach you anything? So also comes to find out that my dad actually interviewed at Sunset back in 1994, but he never got the position because my Little League baseball coach did. So it was this kind of weird freight destiny is what I call it that brought me here.
Yeah, that's crazy. So he was upset because your dad and grandpa were both truck drivers and you were taking.
Yeah, it was the ultimate betrayal. It was like Mufasa kicking Scar like off the cliff is what it was.
That makes sense.
But today he's very happy with my decision, and he sees how, you know, as part of my initiative to make things safer on the roadways and easier on our carrier partners and their drivers, and WeatherOptics really helps us to do that. I've showed him what we've done here, and he thinks it's really cool.
That's awesome. And it's a great story on how you got into Sunset. And speaking of Sunset, you know, what kind of separates you guys as a 3PL? What do you guys do maybe differently than other 3PLs that's unique?
Yeah, I think I was unpacking this with Seth Clevenger from Transport Topics a few weeks back because, as much as I hate the word table stakes, every quality brokerage in 2024, is going to say that they're a service-driven brokerage, right? So, how do you differentiate yourself as a service-driven brokerage from the ocean of other service-driven brokerages out there? And I like to say that we're not a service-driven brokerage as much as we are an accuracy-focused brokerage. And we look at the service-driven brokerages that outsource a lot of their labor, either nearshore or offshore, and the accuracy of the work that gets done by those employees. And then you look at the other service-driven brokerages that really lean into automation and run very low OpEx, very lean teams to be able to support how they do business with their clients and their carrier partners. And then you look at the brokerages that combine that. There's a little bit of business process orchestration between offshore teams and tech teams where that kind of comes together. But I truly believe that there's no one more accurate than an onshore trained homegrown logistics professional. And what we do is we have a farm system is what we call it. Similar to baseball. We're not going to say that we invented this. We have a single A, double A, triple A, and major league team here. And we like many others, we like to bring in green folks with no prior industry experience and raise them grass-fed sunset and teach them how to be accurate the way that we are accurate. And our mission is to eliminate as many exceptions that we personally are able to control our own destiny on, because we know that 5% of the time it's not going to go right. 5% of the time it goes wrong 100% of the time in transportation. That's why on-time metrics exist. That's why a good on-time looks like 95%. So you know that 5% of the time something is going to happen outside of your control. How can you make sure that it's always only something outside of your control that prevents that shipment from picking up or delivering on time? And how can you also make sure that if something does happen outside of your control, you're proactively notifying your client or your carrier partner as soon as possible? Put yourself in as many proactive situations rather than reactive, and also making sure that you're going about your job so diligently that every keystroke that you do, every phone call that you make, and every email that you answer is as accurate as possible and eliminates as many gaps as possible that you yourself are in control of. That's what we believe separates us as a service-driven brokerage or an accuracy-focused brokerage compared to what many others in the space say today as a service-driven brokerage.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that's such a unique perspective, right? And I like the fact that you guys are focused on taking people with little or no experience, right? And kind of throwing them into the world of sunset and 3PLs and, allowing them to be creative as well, right? And I think innovative. One of the things that stuck out to me, when we first started talking, was that you guys are willing to be an early adopter of our solution, and tech-facing, tech-forward, innovative companies are usually the first ones to get in on solutions that are currently in the market. So I guess talking more a bit about weather, when you think of weather in the 3PL industry, what role does kind of weather play, big picture, not just at Sunset, but overall for brokerage and third-party logistics?
It's the boogeyman. It really is. We know that it's capable of impacting any load at any given time, but coast to coast, border to border, Canada to US, that's a lot of ground to cover. And especially if you're not segregating your teams by region, it's tough to keep up with the weather on any given day, let alone being able to put two and two together, which shipments you have scheduled to pick up or in transit or scheduled to deliver that day that may be impacted by the weather. And we have to realize and appreciate and sympathize with the fact that there are only so many hours in a day. We, traditionally, to see if with a weather has impacted a shipment, most commonly you're hearing it from the driver or the dispatcher and going back to that reactive position that we just talked about. You're hearing it for the driver or dispatcher same day or as it's happening, direct, like, hey, I'm looking at the windshield right now and this is what's happening. Well, it's like, okay, number one, be safe, please. Like, we don't have to talk right now. Just call me when it's safe. And number two, we have to now go out and validate that that is in fact the case. I'm reacting to information that, you know, there are so many sources out there that enable it to be proactive, but none of those sources have ever really taken a stance of being able to support transportation, let alone adding a level of granularity to transportation to not only give you a route-based impact, but also a scale, size, and measure of the potential impact on a route-based level. I think that's a very niche offering of what was already a very niche space to be able to incorporate weather data into a load by load evaluation as compared to more regional or geography based evaluation. The Weather Channel APIs, while they are very good, they seem to just be kind of where the buck stops, or historically where it has stopped. So it's been great to see that there are services now that can enable us to be in that proactive position as it pertains to the weather. And one of the things that we realize is, especially for westbound shipments, right, where the load is going west and the weather is going east, and they're going to meet somewhere. That's really where a lot of the gaps and exceptions can be eliminated with a proactive approach, is potentially making sure that the dispatcher at a minimum is informed that that driver could be, you know, hey, you just picked up in Olathe, Kansas. I know that this load is delivering in Los Angeles. The driver can anticipate weather in Denver based off of what we're seeing. And I think that that's a really cool flavor and a really cool differentiator for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about reactivity, you know, and first hearing about weather issues from a driver, like in real time or after the fact, why is that an issue? Why is that less than ideal to be hearing, you know, during or after the fact that, hey, this happened, as opposed to knowing 2, 3, 4 days ahead of time?
Yeah, being in a reactive position like that, especially you know, snow in the Midwest, for example, there's 4.5 months out of year where you can just expect snow to be a possibility. So it's never a fun conversation with a client. Hey, your load is going to miss their 7 a.m. appointment at a grocery warehouse, and the next available appointment is 3 days from now, because the driver was 15 minutes behind due to inclement weather. And the first question that you always get is, does the driver not have Google? Does the driver not subscribe to weather notifications? Did the driver not look out the window this morning? Those are always definitely leave your cheeks a little rosy and not the best conversations to have. You know, you claim that you're a logistics professional supported by all the best technology in the industry, yet you can't get a pulse on the weather. That 2 and 2, like, that's not adding up, right? So you lose a lot of credence and faith in what you're doing with your client whenever situations like that come up, and they're extremely, extremely, extremely common, especially during the winter months. It happens every single day. It happens every single hour. Every brokerage in the entire country, it happens to. There's no way around it. But how many times can you eliminate that conversation from happening? It's never going to be zero, but what can you be doing better to get that conversation or the instance of that happening to near zero?
Yep, that makes sense. And then I guess for Sunset specifically, like prior to leveraging WeatherOptics and our kind of niche solution, which is all about, you know, simulating shipments, right, and telling you how it will impact shipment. What were you guys doing previously, and kind of what was that like?
Yeah, we had the Weather Channel and still do to this day. But this is very common in any brokerage bullpen. You're going to see multiple TVs with the Weather Channel on them. But whenever you're so nose down in your work, either in your TMS, in your email, on the phone, the last thing that you're really going to be looking at is those TVs. So I like to say that we virtue signal the weather a lot. We want everyone to be aware of it, but there's also not enough time in the day to be looking up at the Weather Channel, keeping up with every little thing. And then 33% of the time you look up and it's an ad for like a guacamole chopper or something, like as seen on TV. So it's not really a good use of your time 33% of the time. And then obviously there's that reactive situation, like I said, where the man or woman looking out the windshield just notified us that the weather's bad, and we're in a reactive situation to go out and try to validate that. The metaphor that I always use is the weather. Like, we could have someone in tracking and tracing sitting 5 feet from that TV, and they can just say that a tornado has just touched down in Mobile, Alabama. This is not a shameless plug for Twister 2, by the way. A tornado just touched down in Mobile, Alabama, and they're on the phone with the driver like, "Hey, man, this is John with Sunset. Just checking on that delivery in Mobile. Is it a nice sunny day?" Like, they're not really putting two and two together, because it just takes so much mental bandwidth to be able to keep up with. And that's at no fault to anybody. It's I am failing them in that situation by not making that easier to keep up with.
Yep. And so I imagine not only was it time consuming, but it was, like you said, sort of error prone, right? Because there's so many shipments that you need to be tracking, and then weather is constantly moving. And so someone sitting there trying to figure out where's the intersection and what's the actual.
You got it. Like, yeah, I know I called it the boogeyman earlier, but you just put it perfectly. Weather is the biggest moving target that we can never seem to hit in our industry. And WeatherOptics and what you guys do with the weather impact road conditions, that allows us to come closer to hitting that target than we've ever been able to before.
Absolutely. And if we talk about Sunset now, even more specifically, and what you guys are doing with us, I think it's really unique, first of all, where you're taking our RightRoute API, which is all about, the origin, destination, departure time. We do kind of risk assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk more about how you sort of integrated, how you're using the RightRoute software and WeatherOptics tools in general within Sunset?
Yeah, it's created kind of our real-time personal meteorologist is what it has. And I'm not going to come on here and say that, we've incorporated AI into the routine or anything like that, because it's not over the top what we've done. The services are very easy to use. They're very point and click, and all you have to do is just say, when you want data and how you want data. And we've set up routines based off of certain signals or certain milestones being hit, that we just go knock on the door and ask the question, say, how's the weather? Here's where the load picked up. Here's where the load delivered. Here's where the driver's at now. How's the weather? And we get a very educated response on that. And based on the response, we're able to do a lot of really cool things with it downstream, load by load notifications. We can also send out summary reports every morning internally and even to our clients, letting them know, hey, here are your at-risk shipments today that could potentially cause delays. We're not going to say that the load is going to be late, but we're going to say that proactively, these are things that we're monitoring, these are things that we are aware of, and these are things that we are making sure that we are giving a special and more attentive eye to today in order to prevent disruptions or preventing this load from picking up or delivering on time. There's so much downstream that you can do in the way of visibility, in the way of controls, and in the way of just facilitating a warm conversation with your clients and carrier partners about the weather and the impact that it stands to have on service levels.
Absolutely. And sort of picking that apart a little bit, what are some of the main advantages you would say since integrating WeatherOptics that you guys have been able to uncover, if you had to boil it down basically, and talk about some of the key pieces, or even any examples of hey, there was this snowstorm or this event where we were able to get out ahead of it. Anything like that.
Yeah, the winter season was great. And I know I had already talked on no, it wasn't great, but what we were able to do with this year being our first year of full-fledged implementation of the WeatherOptics APIs, that we were able to navigate our rainy season or winter season much easier. I'm so sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Give me one moment. Okay.
You're
We
good.
were able to navigate it much easier. Like westbound shipments, we were already being able to, as soon as the load picked up, have a conversation with the driver. Watch your route, be prepared for delays. Wind, rain, freezing rain, snow are potentially on the horizon for you. I can't give you an exact time and place, but I would encourage you to be aware and be familiar. And we don't tell the driver which route to take, but we can proactively notify them about that. Additionally, what that allows us to do is also identify the drivers that are potentially in transit through inclement weather or going through or about to be going through inclement weather. And our objective, isn't to call the driver or in that scenario and say, hey, I can see that you're going through inclement weather. That's not a very positive or safe phone call. But what it allows us to do is it allows us to make the educated decision of when we should or should not want to get in contact with a driver and rather prefer to speak with their dispatcher. From a risk prevention standpoint, it eliminates a lot of potential distractions in the instance that we know that the driver may be going through an area of inclement weather, and that's going to nudge us away from that. So don't think about it from the perspective of, hey, we're going to call the driver and remind them that they're looking out the windshield and there's a blizzard outside. We're not going to do that. We are going to say that we now are empowered with the knowledge to know that that is not going to be a good or a safe phone call, and we should look to get information about that load through a different medium.
That makes total sense. I think my automated lights shut off on me. And so did yeah. Yeah, that makes complete sense. When you think about like the actual integration, how easy or hard was that for your team to use the APIs and get it into your current process that you guys have today?
Yeah, we think about it no different than a tracking integration, right? Like, a tracking integration, you put in where's the load picking up, where's the load going, and then it monitors the driver and feeds updates back into the system, right? For the weather integration, it's the exact same thing. You put in where's it picking up, you put it where it's going, and you tell it how frequently you want to monitor that load. You add an additional data point of, where was the driver last located, and that's where your tracking solution and your weather solution now kind of start to like create this positive feedback loop of not only being able to proactively look at on-time delays, like your tracking solution has now notified you that this driver is potentially going to be running behind an hour, 3 hours, 5 hours, and then you now have an adjacent data point to look at to see, oh, there's also severe weather potentially on the route. That's likely what's causing this, or vice versa. The weather solution has notified you of potential severe weather, and now you're seeing that ETA kind of get pushed. It really creates a very symbiotic relationship for shipment execution, being able to have the location data and the weather data running in parallel. And it takes the same data points to be able to establish the feed, the data feed, as it pertains to that shipment, or where's it picking up or where's it going. So it's a slam dunk from there.
Absolutely. And this might sound like a weird question, but how do you guys like internally justify the cost of integrating a weather system into Sunset, right? Like, how do you justify having a private weather provider as opposed to going on weather.com or going?
Yeah, you can't put a price tag on service. I truly believe that if you're a service-focused brokerage, that you're going to make sure that you have the most educated team members in the industry, supported by the best technology in the industry. And if at any point you start turning your nose up to adding powerful tools to your toolbox, then you're potentially doing yourself a disservice. So anything that's capable of eliminating even one gap for us is always worth the evaluation, and 9 times out of 10, always worth the investment.
Yep, that makes sense. If we go back to RightRoute for a second, there's a lot of different components of that API, right? Like you have the risk score, you have the daytime, you have route optimization. Is there anything in particular from that product that you guys have been using more often than other components? Like what's worked best? Is it really the risk score, that 0 to 10 score, or are there other components that are involved as well?
Yeah, the thing that on the surface, the information that we make available at a glance is the risk score and then all of the elements that are potentially at play: wind, fog, rain, freezing rain, ice, snow, all of that. And then when the risk score is high enough, we also empower our team members to be able to dig in even further and look at any advisories, any watches, any warnings, and also empowers them to go out and do independent research as well too. So everything is available at a glance, and then they also have the ability to, in the instances it's warranted, be able to peel back the layers of that onion and see on a deeper, more granular level what's really going on with that shipment.
Yeah. What's awesome is that that's exactly, on our end, how we intended that product to be used, right? Where there's good high level information that you can see, and then there's the ability to dive deeper and understand really what other issues might take place or why issues might be happening. So we love seeing that from you guys and how you've been using the product.
Awesome.
When it comes to Sunset and what you guys are doing over the next couple of years in terms of technology advancements, like anything exciting coming up, or where do you see the next couple of years going in terms of your development as kind of the IT technology finding new solutions?
Yeah. A lot of it is grounded on the assumption that Silicon Valley can't solve logistics this decade, is the asterisk that I like to put next to that. The human in the loop and making sure that we have the most educated, well-rounded, well-versed logistics professionals supported by the best technology, not the other way around. The people do not support the technology. The technology supports the people, is kind of our North Star for approaching technology for the foreseeable future. Anything that can empower our team members to do more and with an expected level of accuracy is 100% in play. We're very excited about the developments in AI and AI quickly. We're primarily right now, we're targeting the inbox of what we can and should be doing with all kinds of different workflows in the average freight broker's inbox. So that's a huge opportunity for us there to be able to support all of the pillars of the shipment lifecycle, from the time that the shipment is quoted to the time that the shipment is billed and everything in between. There's so much opportunity for automation in that space for tasks that require zero cognitive ability or very low cognitive ability. So that way we can have our team members focused on the medium to high cognitive ability tasks, one of which is the weather, taking information out of the TMS to be able to identify what weather systems may be in play. That can easily be done with very generic and basic, straightforward routines. So we look forward to trying to figure out a way to be able to bring weather to the broker inbox. Right now we have it TMS, and the next stepping stone is bringing it to the inbox. But I know that's a very broad answer to a very broad question, but there's a lot of opportunity today and through the next 5 to 6 years to really be able to demystify the black hole that has historically been the Outlook inbox of the everyday freight broker, and really be able to drive powerful data, metrics, and automation directly out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an exciting time for Sunset and the industry as a whole. And I appreciate how much passion you clearly have for what you do at Sunset and what you do for the industry in general. And we're very fortunate to be able to work with you guys and obviously continue to iterate and innovate on weather, focused on transportation specifically. So we're also looking forward to the next couple of years. In the last couple of minutes we have here, anything else you want the audience to know before we go?
Yeah, don't sleep on the weather, because whenever you wake up and there's 6 inches of snow outside that you could have been well aware of whenever you went to sleep the night before, just get out of that reactive situation and start putting yourself in more proactive situations whenever it comes to the weather, and you'll see a noticeable impact on service levels and customer satisfaction.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, appreciate it, John. Thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for everyone for listening to this episode of Beyond the Forecast, and we'll see you next time.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.